what a lot of people forget too is they go into a franchise system and they think, well, I'm paying my 2% or 3% for marketing, so I'm good. I don't need to market. I don't need to do anything. It's whatever. I paid that marketing and that's it. The reality is every business in the world is recommended to spend 8 to 10% on marketing if you want to see positive returns. That's just the reality. So to sit there and say I paid 3%, I'm good, it's not realistic. You're not going to be successful like that.
Really excited about this one. I got Michael Llewellyn, Director of Operations for the Joey's Franchise Group. Known him for about 10 years now, I think, since he started the Joey's Franchise Group. And he's technically my boss, but I'm going to take the reins on this one and dominate this conversation. So, Michael, I know you're always bragging about how many years you've spent in the restaurant industry. You started at like 6 years old or something. You're always telling me as a dishwasher. But anyways, get into it. Get in your start. Get into how you got here today, how you became the Director of Operations.
Yeah, so I started in the industry. I was very young, obviously, as you alluded to there. so nicely. Not quite 6, but young. I was about 12 years old, started washing dishes. I think that's, how most people kind of start in this industry, is real young and need money. So you start washing dishes, part-time job, Saturday and Sundays, and you just keep working. So I was, that was kind of where I got my start, and worked hard and worked my way up. Went through high school, university and stuff, still in the industry, held serving positions, bartending positions, got promoted, with the BPI group up to a management position. That's quite the pay cut you take when you go from bartending to a floor manager. It's pretty crazy, actually. Made my way up to a general manager position and just kept working and never really looked back. I got an opportunity about 10 years ago, as you said, to come to the Joey's Group. Their head office was in Calgary, so it kind of made sense for that next step to try to move my way into the head office environment and the corporate side of it. So I took that opportunity, and here I am.
So big picture thinking, right? I think you had always told me you took the head office, or you took the general manager position at the Crowfoot Joey's because of the head office here in Calgary. You knew that's where you and your wife wanted to be eventually.
Yeah.
So you're like, I think I have what it takes to eventually move into that head office role. So I'm taking this position versus all the other opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you take a pay cut, right? Obviously, like when you're going from, $6-7 million a year restaurants that you're running, making pretty solid money, and then going to, a smaller store that has a smaller footprint, less staff, everything's a lot smaller about it, right? So obviously the pay is equivalent to that. So it's a little bit smaller, and, you take that pay cut looking long-term, right? It's the same when you shift from a bartender to a floor manager, same concept, right? Is you're not making $200 a night in tips anymore. You're making 20 grand a year. It's quite the difference, right? So
yeah,
that's kind of the thought process. Yeah.
Crazy. And then obviously that opportunity did eventually present itself to make that transition into the office as a regional manager. And what were the first few years as a regional manager? Taking care of old franchise partners, as far as our older concept being Joey's, and then also having a huge integral part into the curation of what Streets is today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big difference. You go from managing staff as a general manager and floor managers, which, you're the direct superior. So they kind of have to report to you, and they have to do what you want them to do, right? Whereas when you shift to a regional manager, these are the owners of their businesses. A lot of these people have put their livelihoods on the line. They put their life savings on the line to start a business and get into it. And, you can't just give them crap when they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. You got to get that buy-in, right? And it's definitely a different skill set that you have to work towards. And it obviously it worked out, and I kind of figured out how to build that relationship and that rapport with those guys. And, they accepted me pretty quickly. Some of the older guys, they've been around 30 years, right? And I'm coming in as a 25-year-old kid saying, "Oh, this is how you need to run your business." So it's a challenge for sure. But growing up in the industry, like I said, was definitely a huge asset, and I think it helped give me credibility with a lot of these guys.
Yeah. And you said, building rapport, building relationships, that's probably the most important thing you can do and have done. How long did that take roughly? Like, what are we talking, months? We talking years? How many inspections? How many visits did it take?
Yeah, you think there's a timeline you can put on it, but you can't. It never ends, right? I mean, like you said, I'm director of ops now. It's not like it just stopped. You're still building these relationships every day. You're still working with these guys. There's still new challenges that arise all the time that, you have to get their buy-in especially when you're making major changes to a concept, right? I mean, we've transitioned the last couple of years during COVID to the Fish Shack brand, which is a massive change for these guys that have been running Joey's Only for 30 years. And it's not an easy thing to go to them and say, yeah, we know it worked for the last 30 years, but I'm here and this is changing. And, that's a big change for a lot of these guys, and you got to prove it, right? There's no instant gratification and there's no instant buy-in, especially when you're talking about, pivoting a brand that has been around for so long to say, yeah, we have the answer. Here it is.
Yeah.
Right. There's no silver bullet, I guess, to solve the problem of shifting a brand over, that has a 30-year history to say, now this is how we're going to go forward, and this is going to solve all of your problems tomorrow. That's just not reality, right? The reality is we created Fish Shack to make sure we're still relevant in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a slow turn, and it's like turning an oil tanker. Like you can't just turn it on a dime. And, there's a lot of things to change and a lot of movement involved, and policies, procedures, everything has to change, right? To adapt to the new times.
Yeah. And even then, like you say, 2020, we kind of worked on that Fish Shack brand, but it wasn't even green light, red light, green light. There's obviously a lot of yellow in there, meaning I think it's still evolving. Even the last couple builds that we've done and we've seen out there have slowly started to look even a little different from that first Fish Shack. I think it was Grand Prairie we renoed mid 2020 there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same with streets. Brands evolve, right? Especially young brands, new brands. There's always that evolution where, if you're not arrogant enough to say, I know all the answers and I know this is perfect, you evolve and you learn from your customer base, you learn from your franchise partners, you learn from everyone, and you build something that's better and better and better as time goes, and it becomes something better if you're willing to look at it and actually work on what isn't working.
Yeah. And if you're not evolving, you're settling. And we all know what happens to brands that settle. I mean,
exactly.
I don't want to get in too much trouble here. But, I know me and you talk about some brands out there that, had some pretty big growth pretty fast and then just became very stagnant and now have completely fallen off. So
absolutely. And there's always going to be those brands though, right? There's always going to be the guys that are flash in the pan. They come in and they get buy-in, whatever that looks like. But if you don't have a strong base, especially as a franchise company, there's no way. You don't stand a chance. It's, corporate versus franchise are very, very different. Corporate head office, you're fiscally responsible to every single business and every unit, right? And that's how you grow, is if the business is making tons of money, then yeah, you build another one. Franchise is kind of the same in the sense that if they're not making money, people aren't going to buy them. But if you create enough hype around the brand and people get excited about it, they make mistakes regardless if it's making money. They blow up and they open 100 locations, but if it's not financially viable, you find out real quick and they start to crumble pretty fast.
Yeah, no. So obviously the franchisor has to make sure their franchise system makes sense as far as like, hey, can our partners make money opening these things? Are we opening them cheap enough? Do we have all our targets in line, meaning labor and food costs and all that? But obviously there's a huge part that plays in as the individual owner operator as well, right? Because we see it. We have 22 Streets locations, 44 Joey's locations. And the difference in sales, besides maybe some being in a tough location or whatever, the difference in sales seems to be completely related to how the operator performs and how they market and how they're involved in the community. So elaborate a bit on, individual successes you see within our systems.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a franchise is the same as any other business. I mean, the point of a franchise is to ensure that we give you the tools and the knowledge and the systems to properly execute the business. we coach, we go in, we spend time with the owners and the franchise partners, and we make sure that they understand their finances and they understand their labor and why there could be sales issues and how to market properly. All these things are done by franchise systems, and that's the value that we bring to a business owner. The reality is, though, is you're still a business owner and you still have to run the business yourself. And I mean, we have 6 guys in our operations side, and like you just said, 66 restaurants. We can't be at every location every day to run the businesses for them. That's just not reality. As much as we try to get across to these partners that this is your business and your savings and your money, and we can tell them, I mean, it's the old adage, right? Lead a horse to water. But the reality is if you're not willing to put in the work and run the business and put the time and effort in, you're not going to be successful. I don't care how great it can be, the greatest brand in history. It doesn't matter, like Streets, greatest brand ever.
Unbiased, completely unbiased statement there.
Yeah, exactly. They still can't run themselves. Yeah. Right. It's just reality. If you leave it up to a 15-year-old staff member that you've hired to run your business for you, odds are it's not going to be very successful. Right. We have many franchise partners that do an amazing job, and they understand, and they go in and they put the time in and they put the work in. They do the marketing. They do everything we coach them to do. Whenever we go in and do inspections, they correct what we recommend they correct. They follow the systems. They're hugely successful. We have other, partners maybe sometimes that don't want to put as much time in, and that's fine. There's investor partners too, but they have to realize that you need someone to run your business. So there needs to be a manager in place. There needs to be someone, again, that will listen to our recommendations, follow our systems, and really make the business thrive. And that's probably the biggest thing we see is that, we have hugely successful restaurants where the owner went in, busted their butt real hard, worked really, really hard for a 6-8 month period, set the business up for success, put the right people in the right places and key positions. And now they do. Now they only have to be there 1 or 2 days a week, few hours. They go do payroll, some inventories, there's way less time involved.
Yeah.
When you set the business up, the key is the business has to be set up to succeed before you can pull back like that. And if you're not willing to put the time and effort in, it's not going to happen. It doesn't matter.
No, that's interesting that you say that. You were talking about investors as franchise partners, and then kind of being dependent on, either an hourly employee or maybe you have a salaried manager. On an earlier episode, we were talking to Nigel, and he's the manager of the place that we're currently sitting in, but he's also a part owner. And, he said it in his own words. He's like, I feel invested in this business. I feel like it's mine. I care about this place. So instead of hiring a manager that's, working there 9 to 5, or in this industry, probably like 11 till 9, and then just cutting out right away, maybe it's those extra couple hours that he's getting out in the community. And that's what bringing in an owner as a manager does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we highly recommend that any investors that come into our system, whoever they put in place as the manager, there's nothing wrong with investing in franchises. That's what franchises are designed to do. Having 3, 4, 5, 6 locations, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a very effective way to build cash flow and do very, very well for yourself. The difference is like you said with Nigel, is having an owner manager changes the game. It changes everything. They have skin in the game. They care, right? They want to make sure that their business is successful.
You give a shit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really the reality. Is we recommend to all of our franchise partners, if you're going to be an investor franchise partner, the manager you bring in, we highly recommend they have at least 10% ownership. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's enough to make a big difference in how much that person cares about what they're doing every single day.
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes maybe the owners get a little scared. Like, I don't want to give up 10% of my business. But what they don't realize, if that business ain't making money, like 10% of nothing
doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
It's still nothing, right?
Exactly,
so it's just like, it's that extra incentive. It's that extra drive for these managers to go out and drive their business, right? There's only so much that we can do as a franchisor as far as a marketing perspective. So what is it, something like that you would recommend, franchise partners to do to help market above and beyond what is the franchisor is doing for them?
Yeah. So, I mean, what a lot of people forget too, is they go into a franchise system and they think, well, I'm paying my 2% or 3% for marketing, so I'm good. I don't need to market. I don't need to do anything. It's whatever. I paid that marketing and that's it. The reality is every business in the world is recommended to spend 8 to 10% on marketing if you want to see positive returns. That's just the reality. So to sit there and say I paid 3%, I'm good, it's not realistic. You're not going to be successful like that, right? Now, there's other ways you can put money in. You don't have to put direct physical money in and advertise, the way digital marketing or, flyer drops, whatever that may look like, right? It's not always about money. LSM, local sales marketing, is, in my opinion, almost the most effective form of marketing. 20 years ago, that was the only way to market, was LSM marketing, flyer drops, that kind of stuff. We went really hard to digital for the last 10, 15 years. It was huge, Facebook marketing, LinkedIn, Instagram, all these marketing platforms where it wasn't saturated. You can get a ton of action and a ton of response for low dollar amounts. The reality is because that's so saturated now, you're getting way higher returns on LSM, basically going out into the community and offering your food up and, some free taco cards. We push this hard on all of our franchise partners. It's almost a dead art. It's almost like it just disappeared and no one did it anymore, because why would you when you can put $10 to boost a post on Facebook? So now it's far, far more effective than it ever was, because it's almost like when you go to the place, people are shocked and surprised by it. Oh, look, these guys came in here and gave me food and wow, this is crazy, right? So there's a lot of things you can do, and we teach our partners and we push really hard for them to put the time in and go into the community and get your name out there and your awareness, right? For your specific location. That's one of the biggest things about Streets that, everyone's really excited about, is Streets is so different than your traditional franchise, right? It's unique. It's community driven. There's a reason why we name them Streets Beltline Kitchen, for example, where we are right now. It's for that area. It's that neighborhood. It's not even the city. It's the neighborhood you're in. And we really push that with our brand, is that you need to have that community involvement, because it's a massive part of marketing that went away, and it's valuable, very valuable.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of other franchise companies kind of, adapting each store, not only in the way it looks, but the way it gets involved in the community. You just see kind of these big franchise companies just slapping these things wherever they want, right? So by taking a name like Streets Beltline, like Streets Oliver, Streets Fort Sask, whatever neighborhood we are in, what do you think that, like, what's the perception from the community when we do those types of things?
Well, I think they instantly take it as one of their own place, right? It's their spot. It's their community spot. And Gen Z and millennials, there's been a big shift, and the old boomer crowd, they're very all about corporate, right? Applebee's is where it's at. That's just the way it was for a long time, right? And
says no millennial ever.
Yes, exactly. The new reality of millennials and Gen Z is that they want to go to a local spot. They want to feel like it's their area, and they can walk in and shake hands with the owner and know who it is, right? And no franchise system's really done that yet. And I think, we're a trend starter, and we're way ahead of everybody else on that line.
But also probably becomes one of our biggest challenges, is pushing that issue.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
So, in your opinion, then, what are the biggest challenges with onboarding a new franchise partner and setting these expectations that these are some of the things that they can do, that they should be doing?
Well, it's exactly what you said. I mean, people opening a restaurant, like opening any business, is overwhelming. There's a lot going on. There's a million things you have to worry about all the time, and it can be overwhelming to not realize and put your priorities where they need to be, right? It's a lot of business owners make the big mistake where they're really focused on the pennies and dollars are walking out the back door, right? That's an old saying, and it's true though, right? So getting that point across to them is really important for the regional manager to develop that relationship where they trust and they believe, oh, no, you know what? This guy's got my best interest in heart, and he's telling me this is what I need to do to be successful with my business. I need to take an hour a week, 2 hours a week, and get out into the community and do this LSM. And really, it's just critical that they get out into the community and they really focus on driving business.
Yeah. Just do a little bit more than just opening up your doors at 11 o'clock and expecting everybody to walk inside.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's great. You talk a lot about what the franchise partner needs to do to drive their business and have success. But like, what do you do as the director of operations to ensure success and sustain success over the next few years? Because ultimately, these franchise partners are kind of putting their life, their business in your hands, in our hands a little bit. As far as we have to make sure we're on top of probably the food costing and the marketing that we do as well as staying trendy and relevant. Streets obviously has quarterly features, and we have to make sure that we curate those and drive those. So what does that look like from the director of ops position?
Well, you just answered the whole question.
No, but you can elaborate a bit more.
It's staying up on food trends. It's everything you can imagine to run a business, we're doing from the top level, right? So, the average restaurant, you should be looking at your food costs twice a year at least. You should be drilling down, looking at your expenditures, especially these days with inflation and the rising of prices of base groceries and things like that, at least twice a year. So we do it for them, right? They don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. We go through and we look at all our food costs, we do all the analysis, and we make sure that the food cost comes in line where it needs to be for the business to make money and be successful, right?
How do you do that?
That's a big question.
How do you calculate food costs across multiple restaurants? Like, what's the easiest way to do that? Is there technology that helps with that?
Not really. It's still the old school way. It's there's new technology coming with some of the new POS systems that we've been looking at really recently, where they take in all of the product mix, which is what you sell every day on a day-to-day basis. They analyze the product mix versus the inventory invoices. So your Pratt's order, your GFS, your Cisco order that comes in is automatically injected into the system. So there are systems that are coming that way. They're not quite bulletproof yet. They're getting close. They're doing a good job. And, in the next few years, we'll definitely be on that trend as Streets and Joey's, and making sure that we're at the forefront of technology, obviously, at all the time, right? That can assist those franchise partners. But the reality is you're still sitting in an Excel sheet, entering, your average cost of tomatoes and jalapenos and onions. And you're going through and saying, okay, I need this many ounces on this taco. And here's what this taco costs after you run all the numbers out. And here's where our food cost needs to be in order for us to make money as a business. So there's a lot to it. I mean, it's not something you can really explain in a conversation. I can show you if you want to see.
I'd love
But there's a lot that a franchise system has to do. I mean, like you said, the trends and the food trends, the marketing, the brand awareness, like we were just talking about with the technology, keeping up on technology and ensuring that, we have the most relative technology and the latest technology to assist these franchise partners. So they're not spending, 3-4 hours a week worried about payroll. The system just does it for them. And they can focus on customer service and LSM and all these other things that we talked about, right? Making sure their staff are doing a good job and things like that. The more they focus on administration, the less time they have to focus on their actual business, and their business needs to be customer service and putting out great food.
Yeah. The customer doesn't give a crap about, if their employees got paid or not. They care about how they are treated every single time that they come into the business. So when restaurant owners, obviously this new technology hopefully will take a lot of that off their hands. So
absolutely,
that's what you're saying is so they can focus on the important stuff, community involvement, taking care of customers, creating an atmosphere, and putting out the best product possible.
Absolutely. And in the grand scheme of things, that's really what a franchisor does. That's what I do, is every day I go into the office and, okay, how can I make the franchise partners' lives simpler? What technology, what systems, what policies, what procedures, all these different things so that they can focus on good food and customer service.
Yeah.
The more we can do so that they can focus on those things, the better, the more successful we're all going to be, and the better job we're doing at the office.
Yeah. And the more you take that into consideration, meaning how can I make the franchise partners' lives better? I'm sure it's probably then becoming easier to sell an individual franchise to the next person as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a compounding thing, right? The more a franchise partner can sit there and say, man, like running a Streets is not that complicated. They do all these things for me and the systems are automated. I just got to come in and make sure the staff's doing a good job. And, they tell people it's word of mouth. It's just like selling a taco to a customer. It's the same thing when we have franchise partners coming into the system. And if they're telling all their friends, hey, I run this business, it's a streets, I'm making great money. I don't have to kill myself every day. I'm not there 14 hours a day. I got great work-life balance and I'm making killer money. I mean, it sells itself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're kind of balancing a fine line. Are we in the restaurant business? Or are we in the restaurant selling business? And we always make the argument that, like, if you make the restaurant cool enough, good enough, the restaurants sell themselves.
Absolutely.
So then you're doing both at the same time.
Absolutely. It's one and the same. It sounds counterintuitive. A lot of franchises, like you said, they're in the franchise sales business. That's what they care about. The reality is if you do a really good job at the store level, running the restaurant, making good money, you don't really have to try that hard to sell a restaurant.
Yeah, who cares about that $25,000 or $35,000 franchise fee up front, right? We want these franchise partners to have success over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, where we are then getting paid in perpetuity and build these relationships. And, I always tell franchise partners when I'm talking to them, it's just like, your success is our success. Because in reality, it's the royalties we collect that pay our salaries to then drive their business. And, we are partners. We always talking about partners. Yeah. We're not their bosses. We're not, anything above, like, we're partners.
Absolutely. They're our customer. Just like a customer walking in off the street is coming to buy a taco and they're the restaurant, the actual physical location's customer. The franchise partner is our customer.
Yeah.
We need to take care of them. We need to work with them, and we need to always acknowledge that, like you said, they pay the franchisor's salary. They make sure we're relevant and we exist, because without them, we don't have jobs. So it's always critical. And, I really drive it into the operations team that at the end of the day, these people pay your salary and they need to be treated as such. They don't work for us.
So is the customer always right in this sense?
For the most part, yes. The issue is just like with any business owner, emotions get involved, right? They put their life savings on the line. They're working at grinding every day to do well and run a good business. But the reality is sometimes that can cloud your vision, right? I mean, I ran restaurants for a long time as a general manager. The biggest risk you can have to owners or GMs or anyone in the restaurant business is it's very easy to get what we call blinders. So you walk through the same front door every single day. You do it for weeks, months, years. You can miss a little thing that to you see every single day, so it's completely normal. A speck of dirt under a table, whatever it may be. And that compounds to every aspect of the business, right? And it's very easy to miss that speck, right? And that's why we do inspections. We're not there to trip them up and catch them doing things they shouldn't be doing. It's there to say, hey, we're a fresh set of eyes. We're walking into your business and, you're in here every single day. You may have thought this was normal, but this isn't normal. A customer looks at it this way and here's what you need to fix, right? And that's just the reality is you kind of, yeah, exactly. You have to have that extra set of eyes, right?
You're on such a roll.
I know.
I just couldn't put the cherry on top.
Couldn't nail it.
But that's all right. So, Joey's Fish Shack Streets, Director of Ops, Michael Llewellyn. Where do we see the brand going in the next 5-10 years? Where do you want to be? Where do you think we can be? What's realistic? What is ultimately, I know me and you talk quite a bit and we have pretty big ambitions.
Of course we do.
But what's reality? What does it look like over the next 5-10 years?
Well, the reality is we've worked really hard over the last few years to build out the systems, identify some of the issues, correct those issues, and really turn it into a solid brand that can expand. And as we talked about earlier, there's brands out there that flash in the pan. We're always cognizant of that and ensuring that isn't our brand, won't happen to us. That we have the base and we have the systems that if we blow up to 1, 2, 3, 400 stores, we have a strong base to be able to handle that and deal with it and keep that success rolling. So that's really it. Is we're there, we're on the tipping point, and I think in the next few years you'll see the tip. The reality is I easily see us with our American expansion coming in this year, us being at the 200-300 locations in the next 5 years.
That'd be nice.
It's huge numbers. It sounds aggressive, but it's reality. I mean, eventually you hit a critical mass and you start to grow faster and faster. You build the company with it. and you have rapid growth. I mean, that's how all the big boys started, right? They had 10 locations, then they had 20, then 30, then 40. And eventually, if you can grow the business and the stability and the platforms and the systems with the growth of the brand, you manage the growth and you keep it growing faster and faster. And the company obviously gets bigger and bigger to sustain that growth and to manage the growth and handle it.
Yeah. So build it as they come, not build it then they come.
Correct. Yeah.
What is it? Build it as, what is the Rome saying? What is it? Build it
when in Rome?
I don't know. Anyways, no, that's interesting. I mean, that's really exciting. I think, we're going to do big things, and I'm glad to see you at the helm and taking control over all these issues. So
thanks.
Not just issues, obviously, but obviously all the goods.
Opportunities. All challenges and opportunity to do better.
Exactly. And our day-to-day is full of challenges, but I think it's made us better as a whole.
Absolutely.
We built a great head office team, and I think we have great relationships with lots of our franchise partners. And
absolutely.
It's building on that and then finding more great partners to continue building with.
Absolutely.
One last question before we go. We talked a lot about, community involvement, getting involved in the community, whether it's our Streets for Streets food raiser or, the way we encourage our franchise partners to interact with the community. But I think one of the coolest things that we've done, and this was actually the first store we did it in, number 8, Streets Beltline Kitchen, was we hire local graffiti artists to come in and paint the murals, to kind of have some inspiration from the local community, but also, put the artist's kind of artistic touch on things as well. So what was the decision like when doing that and coming up with that idea?
Well, it's exactly like you said, right? It's being part of the community and hiring local artists and local talent to build these works of art. That's what they are. I mean, yes, it's graffiti. Yes, it's, streets. But at the end of the day, it's a work of art. These guys are artists and they do amazing work and they're very, very talented. And we want to share that with the community and support the local artists in those communities. So it's just like we talked about earlier, how community involvement is so important. This is just another extension of that and a way for us to honor the community and honor the local artists in the community and give them some recognition and work too, right? But obviously it's paid. It's not a volunteer basis. So we pay them to come in and do what they do.
Yeah. And obviously it's one more person that's then promoting our place.
Absolutely.
Because they want all their friends and family to go check out the big mural that they posted, right?
It's not 100% altruistic, but it is great that we involve the community as much as we possibly can. And I think that's just the reality of the demographics that are shifting in the world, is the millennials and Gen Zs care about that stuff. They care about local community. I mean, we're millennials too. We're probably the biggest proponents of it. Where we go eat, it's always local community spots. When's the last time we went to Harvey's?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, we're supporting the local community. And I think a lot of the people in our generation feel the same way. And we're giving them a franchise where they can do that. I mean, we just got the locally owned and operated stickers for the front doors. So people understand we're not a big corporate structure. These are community members that have put their life savings on the line and they've opened a business and they're working hard to run a great business and give some great food to the local community.
Yeah, I like that. I like those locally owned and operated because, people need to understand that, right? Like, yes, it's a big, bad franchise coming in their small town, but ultimately it's most likely someone from their community that ended up buying into that franchise. Yeah. And just because, they have a bit of brand recognition and they started in a big city doesn't mean that this individual who lives and breathes and probably grew up in this small town, they want to be treated as a local business and such.
Well, right? They are local businesses. Yeah.
So I think that's awesome. And, I'm excited to continue working with these graffiti artists. I think it's a great initiative and it's awesome seeing every mural turn out a little bit differently, as well as, we got the sickest artwork of any franchise there is.
That's true. Agreed.
Yeah.